They're never far, you know? They won't come out by day. Not when that old sun's shining, but don't think that means they went away. Shadows never go away. The White Walkers, or the Others, are the biggest mystery of A Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. Game of Thrones ended with no real resolution or answers to any of the questions book readers have. And who knows when Bestie George is going to finish Winds of Winter. We were left with questions. What are the White Walkers? What do they want? Who made them? Why did they return after so long? I was pondering, and I noticed something about the White Walkers. Something I don't think has ever been talked about or explored. And the more I look into this, the more the connections snapped in my brain. In the prologue of the first book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series, we get a glance at the impending doom that is facing Westeros. The White Walkers, or as the book readers know them, the Others. But they are also called shadows by those who know them best. And that means way more than we think it does. The Game of Thrones TV show did a cold open for the premiere of the very first episode of Game of Thrones with the prologue. And while they did a good job, with writers like George R.R. Martin, the devil is always in the details. And baby, I love the details. The description of the White Walkers is probably not what you think it is if you haven't read the books. But don't worry, I got you. This is the first description we have of them from the prologue. Pale shapes gliding through the wood. He turned his head, glimpsed a white shadow in the darkness. Then it was gone. They're terrified. They're not sure what they have seen, but it becomes freezing cold. Then Will sees them again, and it says, a shadow emerged from the dark of the wood. It stood in front of Royce. Tall it was, and gaunt, and hard as old bones, with flesh pale as milk. They also are said to have blue eyes, deeper and bluer than any human eyes, a blue that burned like ice. The White Walkers also have a really cool armor that's like reflective and camouflage. It changes colors as they move. The White Walkers are described like shadows over and over again. They are called shadows. And in every prologue following the first one, there are mentions of the White Walkers and shadows. Stannis has a full patch face, and in the prologue of Clash of Kings, Patchface says, the shadows come to dance, my lord, dance, my lord, dance, my lord. The shadows come to stay, my lord, stay, my lord, stay, my lord. Now, you may think this pertains to Melisandre being at Dragonstone, but again, the devil is in the details. Patchface is singing this as the White Raven has arrived from the Citadel, announcing the end of summer and the beginning of winter. And it might make you question, well, why does the shadows come to dance? What dance? But in the prologue in A Game of Thrones, which is the book that preceded this one of the dopest one-liners that was ever delivered, and this was said to a White Walker, by Waymore Royce. The Others slid forward on silent feet. In its hand was a longsword like none that Will had ever seen. No human metal had gone into the forging of that blade. It was alive with moonlight, translucent, a shard of crystal so thin it seemed almost to vanish when seen edge on. There was a faint blue shimmer to the thing, a ghost light that played around its edges, and somehow Will knew it was sharper than a razor. Sir Waymar met him bravely. Dance with me then. He lifted his sword high above his head, defiant. Dance with me then, he said to the shadows. And in the next prologue, as the white bird from the Citadel announcing that winter is coming arrives, Patchface is saying, the shadows come to dance. In the Storm of Swords prologue, we end with 3 horn blasts and the White Walkers are attacking the Fist of the First Men. We hear the horn blow 3 times and it cuts. We don't get to see the battle, but we see it through Sam's flashbacks. Samwell picks up when it's over, but he says, the horn blew thrice long. 3 long blasts means others. The White Walkers of the wood, the cold shadows, the monsters of tales that made him squeak and tremble as a boy. Shadows, shadows, shadows. Literally, those who know the White Walkers best call them shadows. And then, in the prologue for Feast for Crows, we're at the Citadel and we get this famous line. Old powers waken, shadows stir. An age of wonder and terror will soon be upon us. An age for gods and heroes. If you have not listened to the Obsidian Nights podcast, my reread podcast, Game of Thrones is complete and I'm moving on to A Clash of Kings. And the new season is about to come out, so check me out on Spotify, Apple, Alexa, wherever you listen to podcasts. But old powers are waking and shadows are stirring. White Walkers. Then in the dance prologue, we get more White Walker and white imagery from Vamir's Sixskins. Below, the world had turned to ice. Fingers of frost crept slowly up the weirwood, reaching out for each other. The empty village was no longer empty. Blue-eyed shadows walked amongst the mounds of snow. If the language all around the White Walkers is shadows, shadows may be more important than we think. Anytime I think of shadows, I immediately think of Melisandre, the shadowbinder of Ahai. It makes me think about how powerful she is at the wall, and it makes me think about this one quote that she says. She was stronger at the wall, stronger even than in Ahai. Her every word and gesture was more potent, and she could do things that she had never done before. Such shadows as I bring forth here will be terrible, and no creature of the dark will stand before them. Does that not make your spidey senses tingle just a little bit? In the books, Melisandre creates 2 shadow assassins, one to kill Renley Baratheon and one to kill Sir Courtney Penrose. On Game of Thrones, they cut my sassy pants Courtney Penrose, but I'm gonna do a video all about him. Melisandre actually gets pregnant and delivers these shadows like they are babies. We know of 2 shadowbinders, Quaithe and Melisandre, and they are both women. Given that the shadow binding we have seen involves childbirth, I'm of the thought that you must be a woman to be a shadow binder. Put a pin in that, because we're going to go back there. In Clash of Kings, in order for Melisandre to be able to get the shadow into Storm's End to kill Sir Courtney, Davos had to row her inside of the walls. And he asked, why? Together, they tied off the sail as the boat rocked beneath them, as Davos unshipped the oars and slid them into the choppy black water. Who rowed you to Renley? There was no need, she said. He was unprotected. But here, this Storm's End is an old place. There are spells woven into the stones, dark walls that no shadow can pass, ancient, forgotten, yet still in place. We know there are certain history and lores that point to Storm's End being built by Bran the Builder and the Children of the Forest. And in Storm's End, we have proof that that magic is still in place and no shadow can pass. So if the wall and Storm's End, both structures, were built by Bran the Builder and the Children of the Forest, it's likely it's the same magic at the wall and no shadow can pass. But why would they need to make walls and castles that no shadow can pass through? I mean, in ancient Westeros, was shadow binding a pandemic or something? Because right now in this story, it's a rarity. Unless White Walkers are shadows. Remember, the devil is in the details. And with writers like George, there are a reason for details like this. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to look at Renly's death. We get Renly's death scene from Catelyn Stark. We know he was killed by a shadow, the shadow of Stannis Baratheon. We also know that his last word before he was stabbed was cold. The shadow, something dark and evil had happened here, something she could not begin to understand. Renly never cast that shadow. Death came in the door and blew the life out of him as swift as the wind snuffed out his candles. Brienne says the same thing to Jaime when Jaime accuses Brienne of killing Renly. Lies. Lady Catelyn was there when his grace was murdered. She saw. There was a shadow. The candles guttered out. The air grew cold, and there was blood. Oh, very good, Jaime laughed. Your wits are quicker than mine, I confess it. When they found me standing over my dead king, I never thought to say, no, it wasn't me. It was a shadow, a terrible cold shadow. Brienne even says that Renly's blood ran cold as ice. So tied in with the shadows is all of the talk of coldness and ice. Now, there's some details about Stannis that are interesting when it comes to what happened to Renly. So Stannis said that he dreams of it often, but he was asleep when it happened. I dreamt of it sometimes, of Renly dying, a green tent, candles, a woman screaming, and blood. Stannis looked down at his hands. I was still abed when he died. When Davos sees him afterwards, some days after he's killed Renly, Davos says he looks like half a corpse and years older. Stannis is also having a lot of trouble sleeping because he's plagued with the nightmares. Nightmares so strong that Maester's potions are useless, and only Melisandre can soothe him to sleep. Well, guess what? Melisandre says that nightmares or dreams are whispers from the White Walkers. She had no time for sleep. With the weight of the world upon her shoulders, she feared to dream. Sleep is a little death. Dreams the whispering of the others, who would drag us all into his eternal night. Now, Melisandre could just be wrong here, or this could be just out of context. But the important takeaway from this is that Stannis' physical body is actually being taxed every time he makes a shadow baby. He looks older and corpsey. He's having nightmares. Melisandre is drawing from his life fire to make these shadow babies. She's like eating his soul, which makes Craster's kids very interesting. Now, Melisandre says that the shadow she could bring forth at the wall would be terrible, and no creature could stand before it. But what if that's already happened, and the White Walkers themselves are shadows that were cast by very old powers? Remember, old powers waken, and shadows stir. Well, Varys has a very interesting conversation with Tyrion. It's about how Courtney Penrose and Renly died. Varys is suspicious. Tyrion gives him a bunch of logical explanations, but Varys has other ideas. Tyrion asks Varys what he thinks happened. For a long moment, Varys said nothing. The only sound was the stately clack of horseshoes on cobbles. Finally, the eunuch cleared his throat. My lord, do you believe in the old powers? Tyrion is cynical, but Varys is hot on the trail. And there goes that line again. Old powers. Old powers waken, shadows stir. Both times that Melisandre has birthed these shadow monsters, it's been in the dark of night. We also know that the White Walkers only come out at night. They are both referred to as shadows. They are both cold and icy, and they could both wreak havoc during the long night. But are they both the same? So in the TV series, it showed the Night King's making. First, there is no Night King in the book that we know of. But second, the making of the White Walkers has not been revealed yet in the books. What has been hinted at time and time again is that yes, the Children of the Forest made the White Walkers. The Children of the Forest possess the most ancient magic in the world. So shadow binding may actually originate from the Children of the Forest. But I want you to keep in mind, the shadows that we've seen Melisandre make this far are nothing compared to what she thinks she could bring forth at the wall, based on the wall amplifying her powers. Also, she doesn't want to kill Stannis to make these shadows. She draws from his life's fire, but she doesn't put it out. Now, if the children were the first shadow binders, That's interesting because based on what we have seen so far, shadowbinders must be women. It seems you have to make sex and you have to be a woman, because you have to like birth the shadow. Which brings me to the legend of the Night Queen. The gathering gloom put Bran in mind of another of Old Nan's stories, the tale of the Night's King. He had been the 13th man to lead the Night's Watch, she said. A warrior who knew no fear, and that was the fault in him, she would add. For all men must know fear. A woman was his downfall, a woman glimpsed from atop the wall, with skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. Fearing nothing, he chased her and caught her and loved her, though her skin was cold as ice, and when he gave his seed to her, he gave his soul as well. He brought her back to the Night Fort and proclaimed her a queen and himself her king, and with strange sorceries he bound his sworn brothers to his will. For 13 years they had ruled, Night's King and his corpse queen. The language. Giving his seed and soul to her is what Melisandre does with Stannis. Shadowbinding, binding his brothers to him with strange sorcery. Sounds like shadow binding. This story is likely half true. The time is probably not right, but the details matter. The children of the forest could have been using men's seeds and souls to cast shadows. Strong, terrible shadows. When you hear the story of the Night Queen and the Night's King, they also talk about Night King and Night Queen making sacrifice, being caught making sacrifices to the others. The only person we have seen sacrifice to the others is Craster. Craster gives them his male babies, and it's likely that these babies' lives are being used to extend the life of their own shadows, the White Walkers. And Craster did not just throw his kid outside and hope. This is learned behavior. This is a ritual. And we see the clues all beyond the wall. In the world of Ice and Fire, it says, there are countless tribes and clans amongst the free folk, some of them cannibals, most of them worshippers of the old gods, the weirwood trees. But some accounts say that there are those who worship different gods, dark gods beneath the ground in the Frostfangs, and gods of snow and ice on the frozen shore, if you believe the stories. But if the White Walkers are shadows that were cast, then to sustain, they have to take the life force from Craster's children. And it's likely not just Craster's children. The White Walkers need to feed. The shadows need to eat. And Melisandre says the brightest light can cast the darkest shadow. Name a light brighter than a newborn baby. A baby hasn't had a chance to be tainted by the darkness of the world. It's wholly light and pure. So I think the more that's revealed about shadowbinding, the more will be revealed about the White Walkers. And if the White Walkers are the product of shadowbinding, expert level shadowbinding, then it makes sense that Azor Ahai has another name. Eldric Shadowchaser. In a world of Ice and Fire, when it talks about Azor Ahai, it says he has multiple names. How long the darkness endured, no man can say, but all agree that it was only when a great warrior, known variously as Harkoon the hero, Azor Ahai, Yntar, Nefarion, and Eldric Shadowchaser, arose to give courage to the race of men, and lead the virtuous into battle with his blazing sword Lightbringer, that the darkness was put to rout and light and love returned to the world. So another name for Azor Ahai is Eldric Shadowchaser. If Azor Ahai is the enemy of the White Walkers, Eldric Shadowchaser is the perfect name for a guy chasing shadows of ice. The children of the forest are the blueprint for all of the magic in this universe. And it's very, 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 very likely that shadow binding started with them. In Asshai, the shadow binders are said to be the most sinister of all sorcerers. But when Asshai was a new city, the children of the forest were probably already in Westeros for thousands of years. And if you think about it, shadow binding is almost like skin changing, but in reverse. and it's likely considered an abomination. And remember how it said the children of the forest sacrificed thousands of their young to bring down the hammer of the waters, to turn the tide on the first men? Craster was sacrificing his young too. The brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. But back to Storm's End. If Brandon the Builder and the children built Storm's End and the shadow magic is still in place, then the shadow magic is still in place at the wall as well. It's likely the same magic that prevents the White Walkers from getting into the cave. So how exactly is it that the White Walkers will get past the wall in the books? We're going to continue these thoughts soon, but I'm going to leave you with this question that you probably think is unrelated and from the left field. How did the Starks get Warg blood, Skin Changer blood, Green Seer blood so deep in their family tree? As always, thanks for watching. Okay, my sweet summer children, have a good day.